Good morning, everyone. Just checking that you can hear me first of all. Thanks, Mark. Morning, Rebecca. Morning, Ernesto. How are you all coping? It's dragging on a bit, this. Okay, so the plan today is only a brief class, I guess. We had our recap last week. The aim of this week is to just work through the assessment rubric for the second assignment and talk about some, I guess, solutions to some of the gaps that might be present in the practical report because of these circumstances. So we'll start off and jump in along the way, and also sharing information between you all, because if you recall back to when the fruit came in, you all only had, sort of 10 or 15 minutes in the winery and sort of 2 or 3 goes. So you didn't have a huge chunk of time in there to start off with. So yeah, I think sharing those initial impressions will probably make it a bit more, you'll help each other by doing that. So where are we? We're, okay. So introduction to start off with. So I guess it's being written up as a practical report. So I guess to start off with, you want to outline some of your broad aims for the project, some of your broad aims for the wine style you're trying to achieve, and perhaps introduce some of your initial thoughts on the fruit selection as well. And I guess whatever aims you had at the beginning of the project, this is probably the time to state them as well, because it'll then give you an opportunity to reflect upon those as the report progresses. So don't forget, one of the key learning methods that we're aiming for with this report is to show reflective learning. So state what you thought and what you knew at the beginning of the process, and then as the report unfolds, reflect upon that, showing that you've acquired learnings from the readings and the experience itself. So try and capture as much of that as possible in the introduction. Now, okay, so the next stage is the initial fruit assessment. Now, there's lots of scope for reflection here, because really we didn't have a substantial amount of time with that fruit. We didn't see it on the vine. So a lot of the assumptions you made about that initial fruit assessment will probably turn out to be wrong, I imagine. It's really hard to look at fruit sitting in a bin and accurately characterize it, because you don't see the rachis, the degree of lignification, you don't see the range in berry sizes, are much harder to see when they're in a bin as opposed to hanging on the fruit. So the chances are your initial fruit assessment that you made will give you a really good opportunity for reflective learning. So characterize your initial assessment really well, because it'll give you opportunities down the track as well. And the other side of it as well is also, you're going to be right about some things, and there'll be, again, it's not a question of just being correct. I made this assessment at that time and it was correct. It's about, okay, well, what caused you to make that assessment? What caused, why was it correct? It's about, a lot of the time, getting the full marks through the body of report is in the arguments that you present, not just being correct or being wrong. Any questions? Okay, so the next stage is the wine style that you selected in your winemaking philosophy, discussion around that. So that's not to say that you had to, would be good enough at this stage to sort of say, okay, we didn't have a clearly defined wine style because you weren't aware of what you thought was achievable with this fruit. So you decided to observe and document extensively throughout this process and document the style as it forms. That would also be fine. But the point is that you, as that occurs, that you make arguments for for the style that's presenting itself, and for the winemaking, what's guiding that. So, okay, I was targeting a lighter coloured wine because I thought that's what the fruit would do better, but more colour came out, because, and put those reasons down. Deficiencies in the fruit. This is probably where it does get a little bit difficult because I guess you've had virtually no time in the laboratory, so the deficiencies are what you perceive to be there from the observations that you've made. So if the fermentation had issues, for example, you might relate that to deficiency. If there was an onset of malolactic fermentation, if there was, whatever happens, I guess you've got to make approximations because you don't have hard information to go off. So I think the best way to handle this year is to sort of state some assumptions. Okay, for example, the fermentation produced H2S very early on, and the rate of fermentation slowed. I think there was a nutrient deficiency. My guess is that the Yan was 150, and I sought to address this by adding some DAP. I added what I think was about 200 milligrams per litre. That took me up to what I think was 350. So the fact that we couldn't measure any of these things, whatever you did, try and state assumptions in numbers as well as words, such that you can work off those numbers. And the same with things like pH and TA. For example, if you racked your demijohn at some point and noted some potassium bitartrate crystals at the bottom of it, make an assumption about what you think was the change in TA, make an assumption about what you think was the change in pH, such that the numbers in your report are moving as the process is moving, because that's what's happening anyway. In other years, you would have had laboratory access and you would have had the opportunity to track those numbers, on a week by week basis. So make an approximation about that. For example, during fermentation, the pH goes up and the TA goes down. So as that's occurred, how much do you think it's changed? And during the period post fermentation, where it's perhaps sitting with some level of sulfur, again, there'll be some changes taking place there too. So state those changes, and from a sensory point of view, try and support it with some of your sensory observations as well. Okay, so your fermentation strategies, again, what give the reader a picture of the environment that the fermentation was carried out in. Did you have temperature control? If so, how responsive was it? Describe what effect you think that would have had on your ability to manage the fermentation. Did you have very limited fermentation control? What was your strategy temperature control? If that was the case, what are your anticipated results from that? And so hopefully as you've been watching that demijohn evolve, you've also been making notes and draw upon those recollections. And again, very happy for those recollections to be completely wrong, and just provide a reflective tool for you to learn from later on. So the crushing and pressing, I guess, you saw I know many of you photographed this stages of the process, so perhaps you can just describe it, use photographs from the last assignment. If you can, I guess, just annotate the photographs in general a little in compliance with the Institute's guidelines using the Harvard system. That's definitely how you get more marks for handling those images. Okay, so next, wine movements. How, when, why? These are the sorts of things. What was if you did nothing, there was a rationale for doing nothing. If you did something, there was a rationale for doing something. The timing. What caused you to choose that time? What are the consequences of choosing to do it at that time versus doing it earlier or later? You can get quite a lot of content by sort of reflecting on, okay, if I did that, if I racked earlier, what would have happened? If I racked later, what would have happened? And so take the time to make those comments on those decisions. So additions. So many of you came in early on and grabbed various things to add, either during the ferment or post fermentation. What effect do you think they had? Approximate the change in analytical parameters from that, and so on. Okay, Ernesto. So, yeah, look, should MLF be described post fermentation? Look, I guess the answer to that is yes. And well, here's the first question: for how do you know where MLF is going? And then if you put some evidence forward to show that you think it is going, and describe that process. I guess another point to make also is because the fruit came in relatively late. I think it was week 6 or week 7. So it's been a relatively short period of time from when we received those demijohns to now. So some of you will have completed the process completely and have got your clean racked wine off foliage in a demijohn ready to bottle perhaps, and some of you will only just have finished fermentation and going through malolactic fermentation. So if you're in that situation there, pardon me, if you're in that situation there and there are steps that you haven't completed, we'll outline what you would intend to do, outline what you think your analytical parameters will be. So the idea is to still be able to hand in a complete assignment even if you haven't completed the process entirely. Okay, so next, chemical and organoleptic analysis of the finished wine. So, assuming that your wine is, finished and in bottle, that's the assumption you'll make at this point. What decisions did you take that were well made, and what impact has that had from a sensory and analytical point of view? What are some of the mistakes you made, and how are they visible in the wine from a sensory and analytical point of view? What would you do differently? Okay, any questions? Okay, moving on then. So the conclusion, what we're looking to do here again is we're not introducing any new material, and we're reflecting upon the process and picking out the key points. So what defined the wine that you made? What are the very best bits that you can shine light on to show that the process went well, and what are the things that you learned from that? And then equally, what are the mistakes that you made, and how can you learn from those? What's evidence of those things being mistakes from from the point of view of the literature that's available and from your sensory and analytical work? Okay, and then I guess I made a point last time of talking through how many marks can be obtained quite easily from all these formatting, clarity of expression, accuracy of written expression, all these particular topics. So I guess just take the time to format the document really well, to present the information as clearly as you can. Take the time to organise your references and make sure that the in-text citations appear in the references as well. And like I said last time, it's a really easy way to get so many marks that the pressure on you to provide awesome content is reduced straight away. So these are virtually free marks if you can organise your work really well. All right, any questions? Okay. Okay. So, Ernesto, so the exam, from what I understand, is going to be offered to you online, and there'll be two sittings of the exams of about an hour each, I think. So one will be a series of multiple choice and short answers up to, I think, about 200 words. And then the second exam sitting will be two long answer questions. I guess the main things to focus on, there's lots of, in each topic, there's lots of readings. And having completed those readings is going to be essential for completing the exam. So say, for example, take our last topic, bottling. There were, in that topic, we talked about the physical mechanism of moving through, but in terms of the concepts that you need to understand, we talked about total packaged oxygen. We talked about dissolved oxygen. We talked about oxygen transfer rates and those sorts of things. So are you familiar with the chemical concepts behind that process? I mean, that's a really important concept to get your head around, just from a long-term winemaking point of view. What happens with oxygen very late in the process, and how can you manage that? Then going back a topic, we're looking at, at filtration. What are the different kinds of filtration methods? What are the pros and cons of each of those methods? Then when we go to calculations, can we send you out to industry with confidence, knowing that you could make additions, for example? Okay, so you've got a 1,000 litre tank. You've been asked to add some sulfur to it to a particular level. Can you make that calculation? So I guess they're the sorts of things. So I guess I just draw your attention to all of the readings in addition to the lectures. And I think if you're really if you know Rankin really well, making good wine, and if you know your calculations really well and you've done all your reading, I really think you'll find these exams not too challenging. I guess just a final observation on the exams, the way they've been set up, is so because we're all logging in to do the exams, the time allocations are very, very generous, because they assume that you may have connection difficulties. You may have lags in lodging an answer and moving on to the next question. So I think if you fly through it really quickly because you've got a good connection, I would expect many of you to be able to move through it reasonably quickly. And so if you do feel like you are moving through it quickly and you are conscious that there won't be any time constraints on you, definitely take the time to go back, review all your answers, read the questions really carefully, double check everything, because I think there's potentially many of you can do really well and pick up lots of marks in this exam just by utilising the fact that you might have extra time and won't have any time pressure on you. So yeah, get a sense of how your computer's performing at home, and then try and work in with that, knowing that there's been lots of extra time allocated for any delays that you might experience. No, so the long answer questions don't require references. You'll just be required to just demonstrate your knowledge of that topic. Any more questions? No, Jane, unfortunately. That's to my great frustration, no. We're certainly ready to have you guys bring your demijohns in to bottle them on campus the minute that that permission is granted to allow that to happen. So from our point of view, we're ready. The main thing, I guess, is that you try and work out how to keep your wine as safe as possible during this time. So, do you have a strategy for managing ullage? Do you have a strategy for keeping a check of the sulfur? Can you use temperature to help keep the wine in reasonable condition? I guess it's up to you at the moment, if you don't want to bottle on your own, to try and keep those wines in the best condition that you can. Okay. Hang on. Aaron, so without sulfur, what's the likelihood that the wine will spoil? So look, there's the wine, the process of the juice turning into wine is as natural a process as the process of wine then turning into vinegar afterwards. So there's got to be some degree of intervention when it reaches that high point of wine to prevent it turning, beginning a descent to vinegar. So the likelihood of it spoiling is very high if you haven't got some strategy. It doesn't have to be sulfur, or it doesn't have to be just sulfur, or it could be any number of approaches. But you have to have a strategy to stop it spoiling, otherwise it will spoil. But beyond that, you should have some sense of that happening and the rate of that happening anyway, from tasting it from time to time as well. So did you guys hear my reply to Erin's question? Cool. Okay. Just thought I had my microphone off for some reason. All right. Let me just see. Any other questions? Look, I'm happy. Oh no, Jane. Look, I think you can use. Am I talking on? Yeah, you can use whatever resources you have available. I think the idea would be that if you do, I mean, for example, beer bottles and a beer capper are fine. In fact, crown seals, crown seals are a really, they've got a low oxygen transfer rate. They're quite easy to apply. They adhere to the bottle really well. Crown seals are fine. I think it's just working out what resources are available to you. And again, as you're doing that, make some approximations. Okay, well, how much headspace should I leave for this particular bottle? How much oxygen is the process I'm using likely to include, and make a corresponding change in your, in your strategy to take all that into account. And I think whatever you come up with will be fine. So what I'm hoping to do at the end of this, which we've done in past years, is we'll get together all at the end, and we'll have 20 different expressions from the same vineyard, from the same pick, from the same press load, and I think we'll see there's 20 very different wines that are all that all have that we can all learn off from tasting each other's wines, because I think everything that we've done differently will impart personality on the wine, and I think it's one of the biggest learning opportunities to come from all of this is tasting each other's wines and seeing what went well and what went badly. All right, are there any other questions? Okay, in which case I'll let you get on with your day. I'll stick around in the classroom for 20 minutes or so in case anyone thinks of something or wants to have a quick chat about something specific. But if that's not you, feel free to get on with the rest of your day. Good luck with all of your assignments and your exams. And hang in there. We're not far from the end of the semester.